Well, this is an awesome episode with Dr. Dennis. He's got a PhD in material science and engineering. He works on semiconductor chips, but he's the least fact and figures PhD in material and science engineering that you've ever met. He's the most people person, and that's really why this episode is so amazing, because he comes out of his shell and he talked about his journey growing up as an 8-year-old kid fiddling with computers, but buttoning up his collar all the way to the top because he wanted to keep everything under wraps. He wanted to keep everything under control, lest anything pop out unexpected, especially the stutter that he was sitting on. By the end of the episode, you get to hear the story of his Billy Madison moment today, Junior, and how that played a pivotal turning point, positive experience in his life. It's not recommended to be repeated, but hang in for this episode. You will not want to miss it. Wow, it is great to be here. This wasn't supposed to happen.
No.
We met on Friday. You then flew down to North Carolina.
That's correct.
We'll say why you flew down and came back.
Absolutely.
Not just to record this episode, but it seemed too right to go wrong.
Fortuitous.
It was fortuitous.
Is the word that I've been thinking about this morning.
Yes. The stars aligned, and you're a rock star, and it was a pleasure to meet you. I was there with my dad. Here we are in Midtown. I'm so excited for this conversation. Give people a taste of who is Dennis Szymanski.
Well, Uri, the feeling is mutual. You are a rock star to me. People like yourself, SLPs all around the world, I purely credit with saving my life. I said that in my presentation where I met your father, who then introduced me to yourself. I take that very seriously. I start off by saying I'm a stutterer, not because it defines me. In fact, what speech therapy, other kinds of therapy, what my life has taught me is that the stutter actually enabled the Dennis that's sitting here across the couch from you in Midtown Manhattan today. I'm an engineer. I've been focused in semiconductors for my entire academic and professional career. Semiconductors are what make the world go round.
Tell us a little bit more what a semiconductor. And by the way, I should have said Dr. D, Dr. Dennis, Dr. Szymanski.
Dr. Denny Eddy.
Dr. Denny Eddy.
Denny Eddy, my dad is also Dennis.
Yes.
He's Dennis Lawrence, so I'm not quite a junior. I'm Dennis Edward. So Denny Eddy is something that I'm kind of cultivating here.
Okay.
And I like that. My girlfriend Samantha was the first person in my life to call me Denny. And you should have seen the look on my parents' faces when she first said it. It was as if she said, some absolutely ridiculous name. And my parents said, "Where'd you get that from?" And she said, "You guys, you named him Dennis," right? So anyway, I digress. Dennis. Semiconductors.
Dr. Denny Eddy.
Semiconductors, like I said, very high level, what makes the modern world go round. If you're talking about machine learning, artificial intelligence, anything that charges faster, right? You might have noticed your phone all of a sudden charges in 5 minutes as opposed to 5 hours when we first got cell phones back in the 80s and 90s. All these are from advancements in semiconductor materials. They are the engine that drives the modern car, the modern world. All the fancy materials in your car, all the touch screens and all these things, all semiconductors. More crisp computer screens, all these types of things, video games, it's all based on, that's the physical hardware that runs off of it. So I've been doing that, like I said, since I'm 17 years old. My mom is in IT, so she was my first desk job, and saw putting together computers, and I wondered, just having the mindset that I do, how does that work? And I need to know how that works. It wasn't enough for me to plug in a motherboard and put in a couple of different RAM, random access memory chips, and plug in a hard drive, plug in a CD drive. It wasn't enough for me to say that that's how it works. I needed to know what was inside of those things, and those are semiconductors. So that's
today we're going to get inside Denny Eddy.
Yeah, good luck. Good luck. I live with them every day.
Amazing. So give us a taste. So today, where do you live, and what do you do? What do you do professionally? Like, what's your day job? And then what do you enjoy doing when you got free time?
Absolutely. Well, I live now. I'm a native New Yorker, native to the North Shore, Long Island. But I moved around up and down, halfway down the East Coast for academic career, went upstate New York to SUNY Albany to start my journey in semiconductors, went down to Raleigh, North Carolina to obtain my PhD in material science and engineering with a focus in semiconductors. There I fell in love with the Southeast of the United States, pace of life, kind of people down there, the hobbies I was able to develop and continue, as a matter of fact. Growing up on Long Island, I love the beach, love any sort of water sport. And that's why I decided, after moving from Raleigh to Allentown, Bethlehem area, Pennsylvania, great spot, started my career there professionally, met Sam there, met my girlfriend up in the Scranton area, lived up there for a little while. But now we both live north of Wilmington in a sleepy little beach town, Sneads Ferry. And I am blessed to work in a hybrid remote kind of setting. I'm a product engineer for a British semiconductor firm. So what that means, very high level, is I connect our customers into our engineering, into our technology, make their needs our focus. And so I do a lot of work from home. I'll travel to conferences, travel to one of our manufacturing sites worldwide. So that's what I do professionally. Personally, I do love entrepreneurship. I love getting out and speaking in public. We'll get into it, sure, a little later in the podcast, but that was a very logical step in my mind.
Logical.
On my fluency journey. I found that pushing myself out of my comfort zone in my life, but then as it relates to my stutter, especially, pushing myself out of my comfort zone was a way I can improve not only my stutter, but personally.
I don't think you give yourself credit, because a lot of people, it's cozy in the comfort zone. A lot of people like to stay there. They like to complain. All of us, I'm talking about myself included, like I can kvetch, kvetch?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, in Long Island. So, like I could kvetch for a long time, but am I actually ready to do something about it? I don't know, because it's even scarier on the other side. So when you say it's logical, I don't know if it's logical, or maybe it is logical, but emotionally you have to get over a hurdle, which we'll talk about.
I'll say,
no, what would you say?
I'll say logical to me. And that's something that I think, something that I connected with you on, something I connected with your father on, is that the importance of the journey to oneself and the focus that, yes, it's logical to me, but as you say, not logical. And I would say, even to me, it's not emotionally logical, because I remember times in my life where it was very illogical to go and speak in public.
Right.
Very.
So would you describe yourself, maybe this is it, maybe you're just not a kvetcher?
I am one that, with everything, likes to push myself outside of my comfort zone.
What will be a first time that showed itself in your life?
Anything worth doing is worth overdoing is one of my favorite sayings. So that's where it comes out. And I would say,
what's something you did like that?
Well, first off, I already alluded to it, but I do have a PhD in what I do. I figured that not only did I see different glass ceilings, different opportunities that present themselves to those with that level of education, but I couldn't stop after just one level. I knew there were other levels out there. And in fact, part of the journey and what I've learned even past the PhD in my professional life, but in my personal life, is that there's always new things to discover. The fact of being a lifelong student is, I think, the manifestation now of that mindset that I've had. Take the bull by the horns, wrestle it to the ground. I think it actually, one of the things I remember first, that relentless mindset is another way to maybe say that we're saying it manifested itself in my speech therapy.
We're going to get to that.
We are.
I think Friday,
that was the first.
I want to give you a big hat tip, yarmulke tip. Friday, I didn't go to your talk. You led off the morning. My father comes in and he says, "Whoa, you just missed the greatest talk." He said, "Your opening talk on Friday morning," and I was prepping with joy to present a little bit later that morning, and I wanted to be at your talk. My dad comes back. He says, "He just did the whole thing, the whole story, the whole slideshow that you're about to do. He just told his story, and it gets everything. He's amazing. You got to connect with this guy." And then we connected after my presentation, and you came in, and we had a good vibe. And then afterwards, I remember we were sitting there, and I'm like, "Would you like to do a podcast?" And you're like, "Yes." And this is your first episode ever recording a podcast, right?
That's correct.
So that kind of speaks to the way you roll. Again, not a lot of kvetch. If you don't kvetch, you don't know what it's like to be a kvetcher. There are a lot of people out there that all they do is kvetch. And for some people, it's part of a process. I'm ready to kvetch about my problem, but I'm not ready to actually look into options.
Yes.
Or I'm ready to stop kvetching and actually do some homework and see what could I do about this. And then there's a stage where you're ready to contemplate actually selecting what you're going to do. And then you're ready to actually do something. And this is a cycle called the stages of change. But some people, myself included in certain areas, get stuck in kvetch mode. And you're fortunate if you're not surrounded by such people. But surrounding yourself with people like yourself, it rubs off. You get jazzed, you get energized, you get activated. So I feel different since we met.
Well, don't get me wrong. Again, I think there's things that serve oneself in every part of life. So I'm not going to sit across from you here and say I never kvetch. I would be doing myself a disservice, and I think Sam.
There's no vowel between the K and the V.
Kvetch.
This is there you go. There you go.
See? Okay.
And I know you have Polish background, so lot of you get like too many syllables next to each other.
Way too many.
And as American English speakers, we like to throw in a little schwa,
yeah, a
little vowel. You got to like be able to blend them together. So it's kvetch.
Especially a Long Islander, you want to throw in the aw, the wherever you can.
That's right.
Talk and walk and all these types of things.
You're down. Yeah, let's go to Bagel Boss.
I've been there. Yeah, I mean, we just came from getting some coffee, but let's go full Long Island. I got a bagel this morning, as a matter of fact.
Wouldn't be.
It wouldn't be a Long Island.
Scooped out with the light tuna and the.
Absolutely.
So, kvetching. Let's take a picture. Like, bring us to Dennis, Denny, Eddie, whatever you were going by at the time. Like you said, don't get us wrong. So, what was a memory or maybe a Billy Madison moment you could bring us back to some earlier iterations?
Some earlier iterations. There's something about going back and reflecting, putting myself in my own shoes, but maybe earlier in life. There's a mindfulness technique that I've done where imagine yourself as an 8-year-old. Imagine 8-year-old Dennis. What would he be thinking? What would he be doing? Would he be thinking about this moment? And that's where I stop and really reflect. And that's where I think that analysis and maybe to kvetch just a little bit more in that moment, it is an important time to do so. Whereas maybe, having an opportunity to do a podcast, just go. But
8-year-old Dennis,
8-year-old Dennis you would not have seen him sitting across the couch from you.
What would we see? What does he look like? What's he doing? What's he feeling?
8-year-old Dennis thought Dennis was going to be an introvert forever. Never understood yet the people person that was waiting to come out. And in fact, all the way up until my mid-20s, I remember sitting in the lab and thinking that, I did take a career that wasn't as people-centric. And I remember looking around and thinking, there's something bigger for me. But I didn't know what that was. I really didn't. And that's where I reflected on 8-year-old Dennis. Okay, what would he do here? What would he be thinking? Because at that time, especially as it relates to my speech, I've had decades of reflection for my mental approach to speaking, as well as decades of practice for my physical tools that I practice. I put it in quotes because everybody's tools are different, whether they're physical, working on the, stress level potentially in your body, or, mental, different kinds of things. But 8-year-old Dennis didn't have those tools. And to see that evolution and that self-appreciation, we so often go through our lives, stutterers, not stutterers, and don't give yourself time to kvetch with yourself. That's the essence of it. We can, and that's what I think I try to take action and not do that in my real life, because I want to save that energy. I want to save that time for self-reflection.
I think the beauty of the kvetch is kind of like in the kvetch is the moment that says like, it doesn't have to be like this.
Yes.
I don't necessarily like this. And I think somehow, some way, either there's a feeling of entitlement, or I'd like to think there's an aspiration that it could be better.
And I remember, just again going back to
Yeah, bring us.
the 8-year-old Dennis, my sister, we're all very outgoing people, my family. And I remember having the thought as a little kid, my sister's 2.5 years younger than me. And I remember being like outshined by her and feeling that way, and not in a negative sense. I just thought, oh, okay, I'm a bit more introverted than my sister is. But it's that reflection, it's that, doing that mindfulness exercise, thinking about my 8-year-old self, that I realized that in big part, no, we're extroverts. The Szymanskis are extroverts, and I'm no exception. Just at that time, I was still coming to grips with my communication.
Seeing you give your talk, watching you work the room, having lunch with you at the conference, and then spending some time here in the city, it's striking what a people person you are, what a presence you have, and how your charisma, how you just amazing, outstanding. So it sounds like 8-year-old Dennis wasn't with the same vibe.
No.
So give us just a picture, because you kind of talked about it, but give us an anecdote or two. Like, how is this 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old Dennis operating?
I was definitely quiet. I was more quiet. I was more reserved. I remember, for example, I would have this buttoned up all the way, just looks wise, because I thought that maybe, and this is getting a little deep. I'm analyzing myself here with you.
It's real.
It's 100% real, 100%, and that's why I'm so excited here and getting animated. For those who can't see us here, listen, I'm getting a little animated, but there was the fact that I needed to be buttoned up on the outside because I knew something inside wasn't buttoned up. And something else that's been made apparent as I've grown up, I'm a perfectionist in certain areas of my life. So to have that, I'm going to put this in heavy air quotes, imperfection, as 8-year-old Dennis interpreted it, be in such an essential thing to humanity, which is communication, and then to be even more essential to my family, being extroverts, being people. I come from Italians. I come from just loud family in general. I'm many nationalities, backgrounds, being a Long Island guy, but Italian. So to be loud, to get that word in, to try and hold that conversation, it took growing up in that family to get an understanding and an appreciation of that environment. And I think something that came to me through my practice and through fluency, me trying to be more fluent, and first having that relationship with stuttering, that it's the fluency that matters. You have to practice. I did practice a lot because I thought that was the only way out. And something that I've been so appreciative, and now like making from 8-year-old Dennis to maybe 17-year-old Dennis, 20-year-old Dennis, is appreciating that was just one step in the journey. That the next bit is, okay, how do I actually relate to my stutter, my own stutter? Because it's something that doesn't go away. You could practice until you're blue in the face. I can practice until there are some times I'm so comfortable where I could put my fluency toolbox on the shelf. But then there are some times, for example, still to this day, when I get sick, I got to keep that thing right in my lap, because it's stress, it's uncomfort, it's outside the comfort zone. And there are still many times where I find myself reaching for that toolbox, even as somebody who's practiced, who's been in stressful environments, who's been in environments that are not conducive to one with a stutter. And I think being raised how I was raised, coming from the family I did, in my case was quite helpful, because I say in my case again, because I know myself, and it might not be for others, but let me in on what I might need to practice on. So, for example, raising my voice. That's stressful for a stutterer. That could be stressful for anybody, raising their voice in a room of people. Doesn't matter if it's their friends, their family, their colleagues, random, you know, on a subway, you know, right? Wherever they might be. So to have that in those formative years, while also having a stutter, I could definitely say anecdotally that helped me, as opposed to where I've talked to others where, you know, maybe in that situation they might feel suppressed and that stress might affect them in a different way. So in that sense, I do understand my own individual experience and how that's so important to understand the individual experience with stuttering, with, you know, talking to somebody, meeting somebody new. How might their individual experience relate and impact the person you're sitting across from today?
Is this the moment maybe to share that Billy Madison episode?
Yeah. I, again, you know,
Because you're sitting here and you're looking good and you're sounding pretty fluid and you're talking about like what a disproportionate role stuttering played in your identity and sense of what you were ready to allow yourself to do or what was easy or what was hard. But like, yeah, really? Like, so give us a taste of the other side of what that could look like, what that was like on the receiving end.
And yeah, I think that having a stutter and reflecting, you know, let me know that there were certain times where I was, you know, missing out on opportunities because I didn't have the right words at the right time. And I think maybe that contributes to.
Did you not have them in your mind or they just weren't ready to?
I appreciate that because that's something that I want to make everything clear. I want to make it clear to everybody that in my stuttering world, the words are 99% of the time fully formed, ready to go in my head. And it is just the physical manifestation of the language, of the sounds leaving my vocal cords that is the struggle. I know exactly what I want to say.
We're going to leave here. You're going to go to a flight out of LaGuardia.
I am.
It's like air traffic control. You got all the planes lined up. They're all on the runway.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody's lined up. You're first for takeoff, second for takeoff. You got the whole thing lined up. So it's not that you're dumb. It's not that you don't know what you want to say. It's not that you're at a loss for words or that you're having a panic attack or you're nervous. It's just air traffic controller is not able to line up the coordination of coming in, going out, and everything kind of gets stuck
in a holding pattern.
And now you understand the delays at LaGuardia.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, they maybe if they had a rail line to LaGuardia, maybe my stutter wouldn't be as bad. You know, I'm just kidding. A little New York humor for everybody out there. But
so for you, the words are lined up. The ideas are there. It's just the execution.
They're present. They're present. And my Billy Madison story is a great segue because the perfect example of the words being there. I was reading a book, you know, different kind of popcorn reading styles in English class in high school or something like this, right? Oh, popcorn over to you.
Well, it's nice. Passage. I don't know what's better, right? When they go according to in order, and then you kind of anticipate which one's going to be your paragraph and panic until it gets to your turn.
Yeah.
Or popcorn, where at any moment they might jump on you, which some people feel great. Then I don't have that preparation anticipation time, which is refreshing.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I'm feeling like antsy the entire time.
I want to see if we can put a bookmark because I want to finish the Billy Madison, but I want to put a bookmark in something you said about, you know, which one's better.
Yeah, we'll come back to that. Your preference.
Because I do think that speaks to the mindfulness approaches as opposed to just using the tools.
Yes.
Where you can prepare as a stutterer and as a human being, right? I think this can speak to a lot, you know, not just stutterers.
Let's just go there and bookmark Billy Madison.
Bookmark Billy Madison. Okay. You know, I think something I've learned in the lifelong journey, you know, especially as an adult, especially, you know, where my environment's taken me. You know, I now live in a place where I can be more myself, I feel like, be it, you know, socially, financially, the hobbies that I keep, you know, on you know, where I live, all of these things. So I think that it could speak to a much broader thing. So you have to bookmark Billy Madison. The approach I took, obviously, starting off was how to approach the situation in front of me. with my stutter being ubiquitous. So that's where practicing those fluency tools on my own or with, select trusted conversation partners and bringing them into the real world, bringing them into the situations that are in front of me, that was the first step, I think, in my fluency journey. So I use the airflow technique is how it was taught to me, so just stretch the first vowel that came out of my vocal cords after a breath. So I might do something like this in order to relieve that pressure, relieve that stress that I had in my speech. So these were the first steps. But speaking to the situation, right? You said which might be
Just to
more
inject
anticipatory.
there, and we talked about this before we set.
Yep.
That alone, that airflow strategy or the execution of it, was that the be all and end all? Like that's what got us to Dr. Denny Eddy today?
No, that's exactly where we're going. That's exactly where we're going here and why I wanted to put a bookmark in it, but I think you rightfully so bookmarked the Billy Madison.
If you knew how many tabs I have open on Chrome.
I have like 98 tabs
so
open
I'm
myself.
well versed in bookmarks. You know what I'm saying?
Perfect. I have a bunch of bookmarks on my bookshelf at home, and I also have like 98 Google Chrome tabs open myself.
Amazing.
So I understand. It sounds like kindred spirits here. So
brother from another mother.
Brother from another mother. Mother from another mother. So close on Long Island. So I learned to approach not just with airflow because I knew that wasn't it, because I would still be in certain situations where I had a better or worse relationship with my stutter. I'm trying to move away. I'm purposefully dancing around the word fluency and disfluency because I do believe it's a relationship with the stutter, because the goal is communication in my mind. The goal is not necessarily to get rid of the stutter. The goal is to communicate with your conversation partner, whether that conversation partner is Uri across me from the podcast, ordering a coffee before we met, or, a whole room of people. Doesn't matter.
I'm learning that the high-rise gene is the new skinny gene.
The high-rise gene.
Like things are shifting, right?
Yes.
So I said something last week at a talk, just came out. Spontaneity is the new fluency.
I like that. And it keeps me on track because, as you see, I have the tendency to wander when I talk. We have the tendency to wander when we're talking. We're dancing. We're putting bookmarks in places. All
and credit where credit's due.
Stuff.
Dr. Chris Constantino is my favorite person to listen to. He's also an incredible researcher. I think of him as a philosopher. He's also a person who stutters, and he's been really putting the emphasis on the idea of spontaneity is the goal for all of us as communicators. And for people who stutter, one of the biggest prices they pay is what price they're ready to pay, the cost they're ready to absorb in the name of fluency, but like letting go of spontaneity or letting go of saying the word they really wanted to say, like the best word or the way they wanted to phrase that sentence. They're like recalculating or doing everything, or losing their mind, literally and figuratively, trying to employ all sorts of tools that don't feel integrated, that don't feel part of them. They're like very forced and cognitively big load. So spontaneity, I just want to give him credit for that, but spontaneity is the new fluency.
And when you said that, I'm so happy we're talking about this on the podcast, because when you said it in your talk, it resonated, because it's exactly where I was going, past airflow, past the tools, past anything else. It was my approach and preparation for different speaking situations. And how I did that, I found significantly impacted my stuttering in the moment. And then pulling that thread even further is, well, life is a lot about communication. And what's communication in speaking situations? You're communicating in speaking situations. So I have to be not only prepared for speaking situations, different speaking situations, but I have to be better prepared for my life, for the life that I have to live. So I knew that I had to take a holistic approach. I did speech therapy when I was younger. I did, your we'll call like a more psychological therapy in my life. I've done different kinds of therapies with addiction. things like this. So I've taken a very, very mindful approach to my own mental health. And I've done yoga for the better part of the last year, and that is to prepare myself for life, because life is a thread of speaking situations. And that's how me as a stutterer thinks of it, because we get through life by talking, communing with people. You talk to people. Life is a string of speaking situations. So by preparing better for life, having a more, I find, just relaxed approach, when I'm put in that spontaneous situation, I come at it from a more mindful place in general. And I have found anyway that has been my biggest, my newest, we'll say, milestone in my relationship with my stutter. I'm sure there's still more to come.
So less of what and more of what?
More focus on you and less focus on the stutter. And I say more because yoga, for example, I love it. I was introduced to it by my girlfriend, Sam. She did it in her previous life.
A lot of good stuff.
Phenomenal. I tell her all the time she saved my life, at least once a month, and I have to tell her more. She doesn't appreciate how many ways I wish she could have been the fly on the wall for my whole life, because she would really understand how much she saved it. But yoga is being one of the things for sure, because yoga and stuttering, right? They don't necessarily link in your mind.
Totally. For me, I think they totally connect.
They didn't link in my mind. Yeah. And this is where
you would think they're disconnected.
You would think they're disconnected.
What does one have to do with the other?
But like I said, I went from speech therapy with the tools as well as the mindfulness approaches. But now, having those tools and seeing that my particular tools worked for me, what was next? And looking at mindfulness, different therapies. And then the next even step for me was now yoga. So I say it, now I fully understand. I'm on your side. I'm like, yeah, of course it's related to speech and fluency and my better relationship with my stutter, but now I figure that out because, for example, before I give a public speech, I meditate, and I learn to do that better through doing yoga.
What does that look like? What's your routine before you speak?
I try and find...
You're talking about a prepared speech? Or you're talking about like a phone call?
Anything, really. And
if you're calling your girlfriend, do you prepare? Or you just pick up the phone?
Not in the same way. Not in the same way that I would prepare for, we'll say, a 5 to 7 minute Toastmasters competition speech.
Absolutely. That's more formal. It's also one directional. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering, are there conversations that you do not prepare, that you just go in on the fly? Or would you say there's some level of preparation to every time you open your mouth?
I would say that answer changed. That 8-year-old Dennis?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Almost every conversation, there was preparation. Almost every single.
That anticipation, because that's what really got us going here, was when I talked about what's preferable.
Yes.
Going one by one where you know it's coming, or the popcorn. So 8-year-old Dennis is extremely vigilant, would you say?
Yes, absolutely.
Very self-aware and trying to keep everything buttoned up, as you said, in check, under control, because if you don't stay vigilant, something catastrophic might happen.
Right. The top button of my polo might unbutton, right? And then what's next, right? The whole next thing I know, I'm going to be shirtless in the middle of school, and that's not good. So I was trying to do a metaphor with my stutter.
I was just picturing that, but I also held back.
Well, don't have to hold back. I'm trying not to hold back here. So that's exactly how we got here, was, preparing for different situations.
You want to say what you prepare. Yeah.
Now I would say no, right? If I get a phone call from Sam or from my dad or even from a very close colleague, I don't prepare as much.
Do you hesitate? Like, am I down for this conversation right now?
I'm very glad you brought that up, because I wouldn't have, but I fully can make a connection here. I do that more often now, today, as an adult than I ever did. I used to answer every single phone call, no matter what mental state I was in, no matter what fluency or kind of relationship with my stutter state I was in. If I was sick, I know I'm going to stutter a little more when I'm sick versus if I wasn't sick, right? I used to answer it. But now it's part of the meeting myself where I am, a little more mindful approach to my my life is, even if I do feel okay with my stutter, I'll sometimes be like, yeah, I'm not.
The
I'm
calculus
not
is
ready
not
for that
about
call.
stutter or not stutter.
No, it's more.
It's a different calculus.
It is. It's a general like.
Do I want to intentionally take this call and have this engagement right now, or would I like to bookmark it for later?
Right. Exactly. So now,
because when someone calls, like, it's on their schedule.
Exactly.
It's often not necessarily timed and synced with where you're at. So if you're in a deep work session, you're working out, taking a walk, having a podcast, this person thought this would be a great time to call Dennis.
Right.
But doesn't mean Dennis thinks this is a great time to take this call. But there was a time where it could be for somebody like the be all end all is like, oh my gosh, am I prepared? Do I have the answers that they want? And for someone who stutters, it could be like, is my speech going to work? I don't think so. I'm going to just take a voicemail and see if I can somehow respond with a text message.
Yeah. And there are certainly situations that I can reflect back on that was the case where I denied that call or pushed that meeting or something because I knew I was in a state where I might stutter more, or even just a state where I wasn't prepared mentally. But what I'm, making the connection with you here, and as I sit here before you and evolve as a human being, I'm making the connection that my mental state and my stutter are inextricably linked. Inextricably. So if I have a more positive mental state, there's a very good chance that I'll have a more positive relationship with my stutter.
And that's true with your stutter. It's true with relating to anything.
Right.
And that's where the yoga to me is so intuitively connected. Like, we think people come all the time and they want to figure out how to fix one thing or fix another thing or do public speaking, give a TED talk, even though they have a non-American English accent or some imperfection in one sound that they say, or they want to have that New York accent, or they don't, they want to erase it. Everybody's got a love-hate relationship with something about their image, their sound, something. And I think what intuitively makes sense to me and what you said you got to is that you can't come into a situation, give a great talk, have a great conversation, connect with someone in a real way if you're in this hyper-vigilant, stressed out, overtired, not fueled, not, the wheels aren't greased. If you have a good night's sleep, if you take a few moments to transition into that conversation, to take a moment to figure out, okay, I'm wrapping what I'm coming from. I'm making myself available. I'm making myself open. I'm making myself loose. Nothing to do with speech. Me as a being coming in available, bookmarking all those other things that I want to come back to, not holding them and juggling them in my mental mind as I'm having this engagement here. If you're doing all those things, the speech can't go as well as it can go in any metric. But if you do those things, you actually have a lot more margin of error for imperfections. No air quotes on that. Imperfections, because we're all perfectly imperfect. And like the conversation and the communication and the engagement can be incredible. And even if you notice a little hiccup somewhere, a little crack, a little something, you might notice it. But if you amplify all the other resources you have in your being and in your skills and your toolbox, and they should become natural and become part of you, the margin of error allows for certain things to be there, but they don't become interference. They don't become a distraction, not for you and not for your listener. So that's why I think your state, being in a strong state of health and strength and wellness to the greatest degree that you can optimize that. And then, being interested in the other, not just so caught up in like regulating yourself, but being available to listen and being available to be heard and taking a chance to say what you really want to say.
Two things came to mind, but one thing was, you mentioned that the experience of stuttering is not just an experience with stuttering. People deal with their own imperfections, and that is quotes. That is in air quotes, because we are perfectly imperfect. I love that saying. I heard that on one of your other podcast episodes.
Credit to Kristen Camella. She's the one I heard it from.
Perfectly imperfect. Absolutely phenomenal. And I think that the sentiment that I've said to myself, a mantra, if you will, over the last year or so is meet yourself where you are. Meet yourself where you are. And I say that as it relates to me. because there are some times where I will feel bad ignoring that call or feel like I'm being lazy pushing that meeting. But I might have just had a 3-day work trip and I'm going to be tired. And maybe I'm 100% prepared, but I'm just going to be tired for that meeting. And I know there's going to be maybe something else on my mind. The airline lost my bag, this, that, the other thing. I just almost missed my cab by 3 minutes. I'm all stressed out, blah, blah, blah. So as you said, and I fully appreciate it, I had it in my talk, is that your mental state is so important, no matter if you're a person who stutters, a person who is stressed out at work, a person who might be raising a child who stutters. You have to meet yourself where you are. And if you have to give your child that extra 3 seconds to speak, that's okay. That's okay.
And if you don't have the patience or the 3 seconds right then and there, that's okay too.
Right.
And give it later when you have the resources to do it.
Meet yourself where you are.
Exactly.
That's
Love
it.
That. And last night, just like you're a living example, you practice what you preach. Last night, I was full throttle. I wanted to prep for today. I was available. And you were like, I'm going to give this some thought.
Yes.
And I'm going to get back to you in the morning. Love that.
That is something I see. And I love that you bring it up, because full disclosure,
Please.
I was incredibly uncomfortable saying that. I was incredibly uncomfortable because the person in me, that non-kvetzer,
wait. No. We're going to get this. We're not finishing the episode until this feels comfortable.
Yeah. Okay. Help
We're
me.
going to slow it down.
Maybe slowing it. I'm going to meet myself where I am.
Yo.
I can't say this word properly yet. So I'm going to meet myself where I am.
I'm using a little speech science hack.
Hit me.
You ready?
Please.
Okay. Little caveat. So the word tsunami.
Yeah.
Can you think of another word in the English language that starts with a combination TS? I'll save you the trouble. No.
Yeah, no.
No, because TS is a phonotactic constraint in the English language. And tsunami is not a native English word. I'm not sure where it comes from, the etymology of it, but you don't have TS. And that's why for many people, for example, what's that Jewish bread they sell at the bagel stores on Long Island? The Friday night bread? You know what it's called?
I mean,
Hallah. You never saw the challah bread?
I've seen challah bread, but
Challah bread. How do you say it?
I was like challah.
Yeah. So we say challah.
Yes.
But like as an American English speaker, you wouldn't say it's like, but you could say it's not that you can't say the sound.
Correct.
But there's a phonotactic constraint in your brain, in the software, that says that's not a kosher sound. I mean, it is kosher, but we're not allowed to say that sound. That's not right. That's not right. And there are other languages, not English. People have a lot of trouble saying the th.
Yeah.
Yeah. 1, 2, 3. They don't stick the tongue out for the th. People think it's an articulation problem. It's a phonotactic constraint, because in a lot of languages, but not American English, sticking your tongue out would not be acceptable. So in the Asian languages, to my knowledge, in Hebrew, there's no sound where the tongue exits.
Interesting.
The oral cavity.
Huh.
But Americans,
just have to stick our tongues out everybody.
Stick it all. It's all out there. It's all out there. So coming back to tsunami and kvetch. So the KV for you is a phonotactic constraint.
It is, clearly.
So if you want to get, but obviously there's nothing wrong with saying a K and a B, you could do it. But you just got the software tells you they don't go next to each other. So to override that, if you think about the K as like the end of the previous word. So let's say make, vetch. The next word is vetch.
Make vetch.
Yeah. So then you could put them next to each other. McVetch. And then slowly just get the M to drop away.
McVetch.
But picture see?
Kvetch.
And here you have in real time,
Kvetch.
This man just updated his operating system to talk like a Jewish Long Island guy saying he's a kvetcher.
Look at that. Like Windows 11, Windows 12.
We are 13, more adaptable than we think.
Absolutely.
Totally. So you were saying about kvetching. You had that tab? All right. Took us too far.
Yeah. Help me with my Google bookmark. I think I put that one in incognito mode. My cookies.
Hold on. Let me open that. We're just gonna have to go where we go.
We said that. So
yeah.
So I was saying that your Meeting where we are is where we came from, and I think that's where
I know,
That's where I
because
wanna go
last
back to.
night you said it was uncomfortable for you
That's exactly where we.
and you didn't want to be a kvetcher.
Yes,
And it's cool also because today we talked about legitimizing and destigmatizing. It's okay to kvetch.
we did.
But at some point, you don't identify with that. You don't want to be a kvetcher. So when you told me, hey, give me some time, you said that.
That's exactly where we left off,
Yeah.
and it did.
See,
but
even when you're in incognito mode, you're not really forgotten.
but we, I still got something going on in the background.
Yeah, so start from the beginning there. So the story was, I gave you props.
Yep.
And I actually it was inspiring and it was informative and it was very admirable to me that I was in full throttle. I was ready. I knew this morning I wouldn't have time that might match up for us to sync up. And I was available yesterday and I was hopeful that it would be a good time for you. But I didn't have an expectation and I wasn't disappointed. But I thought it was really cool that you didn't say, hey, can we talk in a half hour? It was like, I'd really like to think about what you just shared with me and get back to you in the morning. I thought that was awesome. And what you're saying now is, on your side,
It made me uncomfortable. It did. I am a people pleaser. I knew that. I know that about myself. I think a lot of us are. I think it's a hardwired thing to some extent. We want to, especially somebody you meet early, like we've only, had a less than a week of rapport, and I was very excited to build on this rapport. So that was another
a
bit.
week is actually, you're exaggerating.
You're right.
We met on Friday.
Barely.
And
Weekend.
we spoke on Friday for maybe an hour and a half and then didn't speak. And then we connected yesterday.
A couple of WhatsApp messages back and forth, but that was it. So that was even more of a reason why I'm like, oh man, this guy's full throttle. I really like the connection that we had initially. I'm wanting to further that. Is this gonna take his foot off the gas to the point where we're not on the gas, where we get out of the car, right?
You're gonna get off the road,
We're just gonna get off the road. That's it. He's hitting the brakes now. Like his foot's not off the gas, he's hitting the brakes. But I said, you know what? If that's the case, so be it. Because I know that I was able to share with you much more in-depth thoughts. I knew I was going out to dinner with my mother. I was going to hang out with my childhood best friend. We've known each other since we're literally in diapers. And I was hanging out with my stepdad, who's known me since I'm 8 years old. And I knew that those conversations would help me better prepare for this and prepare the conversation points that I was going to give to you.
And pushing our conversation off made you available for those.
Exactly. And again, that's something else that I used to and still do. I just came off of as you said, I think I've taken 4 flights in the last 3 days.
Takes one to know one.
But, I always double book myself. I overbook myself. And then I find that I'm not present in the moment. And I struggle with being present in the moment anyway, when I'm not overbooking myself. So I said, am I really going to try and stretch myself even thinner? And I said to myself, no, not just because I was going to get stressed out, but because I knew I wasn't going to give you the best material, the best conversation that I could. And I knew that I was going to wake up in the morning, fresh, prepare, have my cups of coffee, hit you up and say, hey, I have this nice prepped. And I knew that because that, whatever time we were going to have to prepare was going to be what it's going to be. And we were going to have a great show.
Be enough.
That was it.
It's a great word.
I knew we were going to have a great show.
Good enough. Prep enough.
That's it.
And what's cool is that you shared, full disclosure, that wasn't easy. That wasn't like the norm. And even today, it wasn't easy for you to send that message, but it was intentional. So that's cool. And that's evolving.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the other thing I want to say about that is that you said no to me at that moment, but you were saying yes to you. Every no is the other side of a yes. And if you're a yes person who just says yes to everything, the person that gets the no is usually you.
Yeah. And I have learned.
And I have a hard time saying no.
Absolutely.
But when I reframe it this way, it's great.
I learned it in spades in the last 2 years of my life. And I say specifically, not just because I've entered a new decade at 30 or whatever.
Happy birthday. Welcome to the next chapter.
Yeah. Hey,
I finished that
great.
chapter. It's a great one.
I'm excited for it.
And the best is yet to come.
I'm excited for it, even if you didn't say those kind words,
How about
and
now?
words of encouragement,
How about now?
I still feel great.
How about even better?
I feel
I was
great.
hoping I would inject you with even more excitement.
Like
Look at you. Look
I'm
at you.
saying
Look at
that-
us.
I'm saying that
Denny Eddie, this is you at 30. Can you imagine 31?
you can't. I was gonna say like you can't make me more excited.
I think I can.
You can, but I think it speaks to the. You can make me more outwardly excited,
Okay.
but inwardly, I've started to say something over the past year, 6 months, and I think mantras. It goes back to the mantra thing, but it's just saying things out loud. Maybe even manifesting. Some people might call things manifesting things. I say I'm in paradise. When people ask me how I am, where I am, what am I doing, I'm in paradise. How can I not be? I have an 8-year-old Dennis who is looking up to 30-year-old Dennis. What's better than that? But then what makes that is job's awesome. Romantic's life is amazing. Professional life is great. Podcasts with people like yourself. Getting out into the stuttering community, which is something that I've always been a part of, but have never been as involved as I have been in the past month. And it feels amazing. The people person in me is being touched in a way that it's never been in my life. And
Oxygen.
I'm customer facing in my job. I'm people facing in my job. I really try and keep it's all about the people, even though I work on semiconductors with high level numbers and equipment and really quantum physics. You're trying to understand. I really do go back to the people. So the people aspect of this part of my journey has been absolutely, absolutely incredible. And I think it goes, again, all about, I'm in paradise. And what I mean, and that's exactly what I mean by that. It's a state of being. It's a state of being, and it's a journey. You can't just say that it's all about the journey or it's all about the destination. I think it's really everything. It's everything. It's all about the experience.
Challenge the mantra
experience.
for a second, because I think mantras have to be like truisms that are as true today as they were yesterday and as they will be tomorrow, which, by the way, is a little hint to get back to Happy Gilmore.
Good.
Today, Junior. Yeah, the mantra of I'm in paradise, like, what if things hit the fan? Like, what if the romantic relationship disappears? What if the job is hell every day? It's a grind. What about people who don't have a job, who are staring at a wall and feeling like, especially in the times we're living in, like they are very qualified and because of circumstances, they've lost their job and things are hard and like paying the bills is hard and stress is high. Would you feel like that mantra still fits? And how do you deal with it? Because I'm sure things are not always peachy.
No. And that's why I started with, as I said it, is you have to say it out loud, because it is not always paradise. It is not always paradise at all. Are you kidding me? There are days that are...
Forget about it.
Forget about it. We're not in Brooklyn, but forget about it. I go through things every day, struggle with my disfluency. When I order that cup of coffee and I stuttered up a storm, is that paradise? No, it's not. If I have that rough meeting at work, I have that disagreement with my partner, feel distant from my friends, that's not paradise. I say I'm in paradise, yeah, but I miss my family who's still on Long Island. I really don't have that strong network down there. My sister just moved down, but so everything's contextual, I think is what I would really want to say about that statement.
Awesome.
It's very contextual, because paradise and then it's contextual and individual. Paradise for somebody is not paradise for everybody. The person who loves Manhattan, loves the city, loves that vibe, that's their paradise. It's not my paradise.
Quick transition.
Please.
I remember showing up to parties as a kid, and I once showed up thoroughly underdressed. It was very uncomfortable. It was a place I really wanted to go, thought it was awesome, and I thought this was a casual situation. And let's just say it was quite the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of felt like Adam Sandler.
So
you feeling me?
I do. I do. And it's part of...
The nice thing is today I knew we didn't need to do an explicit check on the dress code. I just knew you'd come as you were.
Yeah.
and I would come as I am. I didn't think you'd be overdressed or underdressed. You'd just be perfect.
This was one of those things, meeting myself where I was, because I was a little stressed out about dress code, etc. I packed in a backpack for 6 days. That's it. And I have 2 laptops, notes, all of these things. So I didn't pack a lot of clothes.
And it doesn't smell too bad.
That's a phenomenal.
It's doable.
That's great.
Your hair looks great.
I sprayed a lot of Axe, and this is even hair wash day. So I have to wash my hair. So thank you very much.
Low humidity helps.
It does, and you know the baby powder trick helps too.
We digress.
I'll digress here 6 ways to Sunday all day, every day. But the one thing I do reflect on, and you know, I touched upon like milestones and how milestones have been important to me. One of the bit of an ironic milestone, and we have to come back to this because we've mentioned Billy Madison now a bunch of times. We swear we're not advertising for it, but
the sequel's coming.
The sequel is coming. Adam, hit me up. But I was reading in high school.
What age? We're in high school?
High school, 11th grade. It was it was 11th grade, yeah. It was the start of the year, maybe 2 or 3 days in. So the teacher's getting acquainted with the class, and I'm getting acquainted with the class, and everybody is, you know, obviously getting acquainted with everybody else in the class. And 2 of my best friends, long time, 6th grade. You know, I still know them both to this day. We keep up every week, you know, all this stuff. One of them is, in fact, Sam's brother-in-law. So he actually introduced us. So huge support system, huge group of friends in my life. And 2 of them were in my English class. Obviously, no, I stuttered. I say obviously because, again, we were friends since the 6th grade. And at that time, I was still practicing with my fluency toolbox, and still kind of working on all the different mindfulness elements that we've talked about. So I was a little less fluent than I am today. So it was obvious disclosure.
Can we get a metric on that? Like, how fluent would you describe you are today?
I would say I am.
So if a 10 was like total flow.
Thank you. Yeah,
and a 1 metric was like Colorado Rapids.
Total flow.
Or actually full stop. So like Hoover Dam.
Right, Hoover Dam. Yeah. I would say I'm about an 8.
Today's an 8?
I'm about an 8.
Because that's interesting, because on the outside, I don't know if people would perceive the same. It's interesting. We could do some interesting things with that. The idea of like calibrating, and that the relevance and the validity of the metric on the outside is not the same as the metric on the inside. And so you could say it's an 8. That doesn't mean that matches the acoustic signal on the outside or what the listener would perceive. They're both valid. So I find it helpful to separate the 2. Makes also sense. But let's say you call this an 8. What was 8-year-old or high school Dennis?
In that moment especially, I would say a 5 or a 6.
Okay. Just so we have a little bit of a anchor.
Just a 5 or a 6. I would say about 50% fluent.
Not Hoover Dam, but like low level rapids.
Yeah. Yeah, you're low level rapids.
You should wear a helmet if you're going down on those rapids.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I think that's a great way to say it. So I was reading to the class in that popcorn kind of situation. I don't know whether it probably wasn't popcorn by high school time, and I wasn't super, worried, if you could say. I don't remember being very worried in that moment, but I had a stutter, and my stutter is usually blocks. I find, individual anecdote, but this one was a repetition. So it was a very Billy Madison today junior kind of thing. And my friend from across the room, so it made it even more dramatic, hit me as I'm reading. I had a stutter, and in the silence, he timed it perfectly. He should have been a comedian, I think. But he hit me with the today, Junior. And I didn't even assess the room, didn't read the reaction. I fell on the floor laughing. I couldn't believe that it was almost a full circle moment. And I'll say it because I obviously, as a stutterer, struggled with the relationship, struggled with being the fact that I can't communicate. And here I am, one of my best friends. I can reflect back, I'm 30 years old, I'm still friends with him. He brought that full circle. It was comedic. It was comedic. And half the class that didn't know we were friends, my teacher being on that half, mortified. Mortified. And as they frankly should be. That's if he didn't know me, unacceptable behavior, in my opinion. But the half of the class that knew, and obviously my other friend, also on the floor, laughing. And my teacher looked over at me, saw my reaction that I was very okay with it. And then at that instant knew that we were friends. So it was, and actually we had a phenomenal relationship, the three of us and my teacher. She invited us after we graduated to her house and, to her son's graduation party, things like this. So it was the start of a very good relationship and with my teacher, and the continuation of one with my friends, and kind of bolstered that. It made an even more comfortable conversation partner, I think, for that small group too. It was the ultimate disclosure. And I have to acknowledge, you have to stop and say that this is a very personal thing, because that's, like I said, out of context, it's unacceptable in my opinion, right? If it was just because I've dealt with bullying throughout my life, and that is bullying taken out of context. So somebody took that soundbite from this podcast and said that, but in fact, for me, because he was such a good friend of mine, because we've built that rapport, and I knew him and he knew me, that was actually a full circle moment.
I think what's cool about it, as you said, nobody should take the license to do that without consent. Someone else in a block throw in like some today, Junior, like totally not to be done.
Don't do that.
But as you tell it and as you feel it, I think what might have been happening, if I could observe, and you tell me how much you resonate with this, is like you were so busy being vigilant and bearing the burden and bearing the responsibility of keeping this thing under wraps and in control. And in that moment, suddenly it was lifted off of you. Like it was just open. It was no longer your responsibility to keep this hidden, because your good buddy just named it. Like, this is what's up. We can laugh about it, and it's a lighter moment.
Yeah. And I think that you hit it spot on, Marie, because to this day, he's still just a jokester, wants to make light of the situation. That's what I love about him. And that's what I appreciated in that moment. 100%. It took the burden off me to disclose. It took the burden off me to be vigilant
and
open up. Absolutely. At that point, I was kind of in that gray area of that buttoned up Dennis as an 8-year-old, and the Dennis you see, here now, who's gonna, hopefully hop on a plane, and hopefully it's still nice weather and I can maybe get out on the surfboard as soon as we get home.
Well, I'm looking, and I think this is the full circle moment also, so you don't miss your flight.
Well,
and we got to the Billy Madison story.
We did. I think that was an unintended anchor in the conversation.
So a closing thought, what would you tell your 8-year-old Dennis, or 12-year-old Dennis? What would you tell your younger self?
In a nutshell, and I'm going to keep it in a nutshell because we've meandered quite frequently throughout this conversation, relax. That's what I would tell him. Just relax. Nothing is as big of a deal as you are perceiving it to be in this moment at this time. If you can just be with yourself and meet yourself where you are in every sense of that word, that phrase, you will be sitting down on a couch across from a speech language pathologist doing a podcast after giving a talk to a room full of people who probably are going to be the most acute listeners to you and your speech. And the fact that through your sales training and through your Toastmasters training, less than 15% of how you perceive speech and communication and language is the actual spoken word. So don't worry about a little disfluency. Just relax and meet yourself where you are. That's what I wish 30-year-old Dennis could have told 8-year-old Dennis.
Wow. It's been a great conversation. Thanks for coming out.
Hey, thanks for having me. And I appreciate everything that your dad has done, you have done. And I want this to be the start of a phenomenal relationship and a great connection, not just from a speech language pathology point of view, but from a kindred spirit point of view.
I told you, we're just getting warmed up.
We're just getting
The best
started,
is
my
yet
friend.
to come.
We're just getting started. I
Best
love
is
it.
yet to come. Awesome.
Uri, thank you so much.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, share it with a friend. And if you want to get more tips and follow us for more insights, check out transcendingx.com/email. And remember, keep talking.